Welcome to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty, a counseling faculty member at Kent State University and a host for Circular Firing Squad. We've got 4 members, 4 questions, and 4 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question that we have to answer, including the squad member who generates it. So we're going to have some fun tonight. Let's see who's with us on this episode. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Elliott Ingersoll, counseling faculty member at Cleveland State University, wearer of socks and host of Apply Topically.
Hi, I'm Steph Martyr. I am a doctoral candidate in the counseling education and supervision program at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor.
Hey everybody, Mitch Conrad. Usually I say graduate student at Cleveland State University. Now it's recently graduated. No longer student. But,
he's part of the problem now.
Yeah. So yeah, here we are. I recently graduated and yeah.
Okay, so it's been a while. Anything new with folks that you care to share in your world?
Well, I am plugging a reunion concert with my second duo partner. So Galgozzi and Ingersoll ride again at the Kent Free Library, June 8th at 2 p.m. If you ever saw a picture of us 35 years ago and wondered what the heck happened to those young fellows, come find out.
So that's a Wednesday, isn't it? If I have it right on the calendar?
I think it's a Sunday.
Oh, it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
I've got a wedding to go to sometime around then, and I might have the wrong date. So I'll check that. We should all check that. I think I already have checked that. It's like a Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m.
Yeah.
That's cool. Anything else new? Well, we know Mitch has graduated and he's out. You've got a clinical position you're working with?
Not yet. So the idea now is job applications. Started to send those out. Looking for a place. Not sure if I want to do community or what, but that's the next step.
Yeah. And Steph, anything new with you, family?
No, nothing so new, but did survive another 10 days on a trip with just my mother and Nora.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Because one time I contacted you and you said you're on the trip and I felt, oh, please, let's not bug her. And then I thought, well, it's with your mother. So maybe I should bug her.
I need some time. You always feel free. I'm like, because they'll never question if it's you contacting me about something.
Wow, I don't want that power.
It's like, that's my faculty advisor. They'll be like, oh, okay. Do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have just the opposite. When I contact someone, everyone's like, should we call someone? What do we do with this?
Yeah. Do we need to do a check on him?
Yeah, send that Chat GPT after me.
Yeah.
I'll take care of its digital butt. You watch.
Okay, Elliott, you've got the first question.
Okay, what music are you listening to these days to get pumped up?
Oh, boy. Well, I don't know about the totally getting pumped up. However, on this trip that I just referenced, that I was the sole driver and I finally got to live out the fantasy with my mom sitting next to me. And I get to tell her when I'm driving and it's my car, it's my music. So with that, even though I still had to keep it pretty family friendly, I do the mom edits for Nora. So, one of her favorite songs actually is Wonderful Night by Fatboy Slim. And she calls it Break It On Down song. And so we did listen to that a whole bunch. And that's super fun. And then it goes into all the other Fatboy Slim stuff on my Spotify. But also what was kind of interesting was that my mom, I held her captive, right? I had her right there. So I got to give her this whole spiel on hip hop and things that I've learned and how things are connected and, like sampling and all of that stuff where it is its own form and, but it was interesting. So I made her listen to a lot of De La Soul and Outkast, just, as easing her in, as it were.
So does this mean maybe you should be giving my phone number to your mom because I need to rescue her from you? She could text me. Call me now.
I think she'd appreciate that. Actually, I could kind of see. I played her a track from The Coup, actually, because I was explaining "Sorry to Bother You" and this one song. Boots Riley directed "Sorry to Bother You," and he had the band The Coup, his group. And there's this one song called "Pimps," but I feel like it's kind of "Sorry to Bother You" in reverse, and like a lot of what's contained in that movie was in the song. So I was trying to explain all of that to her. So maybe she could have really used an out. You're right.
Mitch?
Yeah, I love this question so much that I probably spent a good, even 20 minutes before the show, just looking through my Spotify for the year and going what is the music that's really pumping me up lately? And I was surprised to find that I don't have a lot of that music lately this year. I think it's just been a slower kind of year for me. Usually I would be able to answer this question really easily with recent stuff. 2 songs that caught my attention, just a new band that I've been following. They're a disco electronic pop band from Mexico called Midnight Generation. And they just released a new album called Tender Love. The song in question that does get me pumped up on this album is called Teacher. It's a really fantastic track. Love it. I'd have to go back a little bit, probably into late 2024 for an artist that really her entire set of music gets me pumped up, which is Carlita. She writes electronic house. The 3 songs that I'm thinking of are RAF or RAF, TV Disco, and Forever Baby. Check that out if you're into electronic house. Love that stuff.
The answer to this question for me is a bit complicated because the only time Aileen is not, she didn't like extra noise in the house for some reason. And so I generally don't have music going in the background. I do, which doesn't necessarily limit what I can listen to, but I'm listening through bone conduction headphones, through everything that I'm doing, television, movies, or music. And sometimes I need something to get me going. And having worked in radio, I don't like to listen to stuff that I had to play back when I worked in radio. So that eliminates a lot of late 70s, 80s music, and even some 90s music. And and if I'm working, I can't have anything with lyrics. And so what I've done to get away from that is big band music of the 30s and the 40s. So, we're talking about Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, Glenn Miller, those kind of big band jazz things. And I will do occasionally some contemporary jazz, but not the contemporary jazz that's going on now. I'm, Thelonious Monk, those kinds of artists that were popular, but not still living in a lot of ways. But there's another thing that I've tried because I'm on a lot of tech gab shows. And Apple has this thing called Sound Therapy, and it's available on Apple Music. And it's got bands, it has bands signed up, but in one of them that they mentioned is Imagine Dragons. So they've taken, and I like their stuff. I used to walk to their stuff and, exercise to their stuff. But it appears to be all instrumental versions of their tunes. And then they've interjected certain sub rhythms into it that's supposed to help you focus or relax. So they have different sort of genres of this, what they call sound therapy. I used to, when working, go to chill or go to techno chill or something that had movement and an energy in it. Chill doesn't always have energy in it, but has energy in it that could make me kind of move while I was working without lyrics that would disturb me. This sort of does that in a way and is kind of interesting, and then sometimes I creep into classical because I think it makes me feel smarter. So some of the traditional classical will be, but I can't do the stuff that y'all are talking about, and I can't do the stuff I used to play on the radio because it was too distracting. And frankly, when you play stuff on the radio and it hits, you wind up playing it for 6 weeks every day, and it takes the joy out of the song. So, Elliott.
Hey, that Apple thing sounds interesting. I've got to check that out. Nice answers. Yeah, for me, I like the driving music. So the new single by Dorothy, Tombstone Town, starts out with these 16th notes on the guitar, daga 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 daga, and then she comes in kind of a cappella performance over the guitar, but kind of it's actually a rock riff on a Baptist tune. And then Infected Rain, the whole album, Ecdysis, and the whole album by The Warning, Keep Me Fed. Those have been cranking quite a bit.
Okay. Stephanie, you're next.
I'm taking it to a different direction. So I want to know, do you think state counseling organizations should charge non-members to post recruitment calls for study participants?
And I know the context for this question, but we'll wait till you come back to answer it.
And I may not know the context for this question. If I'm understanding right, like I think in terms of like letting non-members post for recruitment, like I think the idea here for me is like, okay, like more research is always good. Like I don't think that, necessarily it should be like a gatekeepy kind of thing. I'm wondering about like how many, because I don't know the answer to this, but something that came up was I was like, I wonder how many requests that they do get now from members and how many additional requests that they would get from non-members. Then there's also the idea, well, like how much is the charge anyway? It still seems to me like if they didn't get like flooded with like an enormous amount of like requests that, and if the charge was either nothing or really low, like that would make a lot of sense to me. I don't know too much about the context though of this question, and also like the deeper, like how many requests do they get? But ideally, like if research is benefiting the profession, that I think that there should be some amount of openness to this. I don't know if there's like currently a charge or anything like that, so I'm interested to hear what other people think.
Okay, Elliott, hold my beer. And I know this is going to be tough for Steph to hear, but my response is nope. They shouldn't do it for free. And I run a public listserv for counselors and counselor educators. It has 7,000 people on it. And I get 5 requests a day for people wanting to post their research on the listserv. And it is so I try to respond to those, and I have some canned responses I've tried to cut down on the amount of posts by saying, and this is true about listservs, if it's research that's not relevant to who's on the listserv, and the listserv that I run is counselor educators and doctoral students who want to be counselor educators, basically. And if it's not research about that group or research where they are informed about something like counseling pedagogy, they shouldn't be posting to the list, but they do anyway. So they want to, what are master's counselors' opinions of left-footed bipolar clients? And we don't have master's counselor people on our list with, then they argue, well, doctoral students often counsel and they should be able to. So it's just a flood of posts requesting, wanting to get subjects for the research. Then there's a whole group of people who don't even bother to ask me. And that's really bad etiquette. And so on top of that, maybe I have 2 or 3 a day that wind up posting, and they post this weird stuff that's like not even connected to members of the list. So they're basically sending spam mail to 7,000 people. So you hit a sore point with me when you brought this up. If I could make some coin on this, yeah, go right ahead. But the problem is it really pollutes the list. And in a lot of ways, it's hard for me to say this because I'm on your committee. And in a lot of ways, the research that's being done is just being formulated to be surveys that can be tossed out on a list, and there's not a lot of direct work that folks are doing. Now, I know your research is to solicit members to do more direct work with them. That's a little different, but there are folks that are like, please take my survey. And it often comes from the proliferation of online counseling programs, because that's the only way they can do the research, because they don't have access to an on-site or local advisor. Their advisors doing everything. So they just, and I can see it coming when people sign up, because I see who signs up for the list. It's like, oh, well, it's from blah, blah university. It's an online university. And the next day, I know I'm going to get a request from that student to please post their dissertation research on it. And then when they're done, they drop the list. And that really feels abusive. So, yeah, no, I know states are protective of that, as they should be, because these are members that are paying to be part of that state association, and they're not on my list. They're not paying to be on my list. That's free and open, and there are not, I don't filter all the messages that come through. So it's unmoderated in that sense. But with state lists, yeah, I would get pretty cranky if suddenly it opened up and everybody who wanted to do research was sending me email through the state list. So they restrict that, I think, by charging fees. Now, ACA has the same problem, because they have these interest networks that, like, I signed up for the History of Counseling interest network, and the only time I get a message from that interest network is when somebody has spammed the list to ask me to do their research that has nothing to do with the history of counseling. They've just joined the interest network to spam the list. Okay, I'm going to go take some medicine and lie down.
I don't know, maybe this is generational, Marty, but I'm like, heck yeah. Yes. Charge these mother truckers. Every time I'm on a listserv or someplace like that, it's like a Angie's list of sad sack researchers. I'm just like, can we please? And they're all like, nothing's replicating an important study or following up on a previous study. It's all these very idiosyncratic things, which, okay, I get it. But kind of the me search stuff that bugs me too. But yes, even if it's $10, people they could afford $10.
Yeah, Paul Pelosi called Cessnet out at I think it was an ACES general meeting. He was the speaker. And I love Paul. He's a wonderful person, but he said, it's just navel gazing research. Mm-hmm. It's like, I've had this condition, or I fall into this particular place. Now I'm going to study myself for research. That's not what Steph's doing, but a lot of the research is navel gazing. It's like, this is my experience and I need to justify my experience. So I'm going to research my experience, and it's going to inform the population about my experience. My question for those graduates are, what are you going to do the next time you're up at bat and you've got to do some research? Okay, Steph, I'm sorry. I need more medicine and I need to lay down.
Take a double dose. No, I think actually I might kind of surprise you right back, where I don't necessarily think that for all of the subdivisions or state counseling associations that everything should be free for everyone just because you're part of ACA and your own local. I am trying to get steady participants. And if anybody out there is a practicing clinical counselor, please email me at smarter1@kent.edu. All right. So if you're interested.
Oh, now you're going to get all the creepy people. That's great. You just doxed yourself.
I did. But that's why I use my school address.
Hi, Miss Stephanie.
So, but with that, this is my experience of going and asking each of these organizations what the process is, if I'm allowed. And it was surprising. It wasn't just because I wasn't aware of being charged. I am not opposed to $10 or $15, and they go through and they'll post it twice, some states. But then there are other states that I've come across that are asking $100. And to me, that feels a bit excessive and blocking, because that's just, I'm going to pass over that state. So that was kind of surprising, but maybe they're just a really popular state for a lot of crap, research requests.
I think it was a tariff. It was a new tariff imposed on.
That actually would make sense.
Tariff research.
So, I think that was interesting to come across. I do understand that people pay dues to whatever state organization that they're in, and that should get you some privileges. And the other thing I got back, though, which is kind of an interesting reply too, is somewhere in the middle, where they're like, well, you might not be able to post on our listserv. We will be happy to post it on our Facebook site. So, that's really cool. And, I'll take it. But I don't necessarily think that $10, $15 is exorbitant or getting in the way. I just think it's funny, though, that if I even paid $10 to every state, it would be way more than the budget I originally had for my research. And again, it would be money well spent if it gets me my participants and it gets me done. Let's get it done and make Marty happy.
One more anecdote, just on the pet peeve list. I got an email. Would you please do this survey? And and would you ask all your other faculty? And I'm like, sure. After you grade this stack of papers, if we're bartering here, let's barter. Holy come on.
Yeah, I get on my list. I get people who are posting a lot of professional workshops that have fees. And they're basically using the 7,000 member listserv as a way to spam to get people to come to their workshops. And I don't even get a cut. It's sort of like if, this is something I developed over 30 years now. And I just think it's abusive. I really do think it's abusive. And it's opportunistic, and it is, and all in the kind of service of, but this is important stuff. People need to do this. And we're just providing the profession an outlet for, it's like, no, you're cashing in on my listserv. So I don't mind it so much with associations, but when you've got private entrepreneurs coming in and doing that stuff, it just bugs me. Before I get any more upset, Mitch, you've got the next question.
I've learned so much about
Somebody mix my medicine.
All right, so this question comes because I'm going to be providing TriAD supervision over the summer for master's students. And so the question is, what are some things that recent grad students should know about providing consultation to peers about counseling, both in a school setting or in a clinic?
Oh boy, I'm in trouble. I'm going to be like the guy yelling at people to get off my lawn and shouting at clouds. When I read this, I didn't realize the context in which you were writing it. I thought it was sort of a general context. And my notes are, don't. You don't know enough. You think you know enough, but you don't. You're not a counseling influencer. That was kind of my response. Because you're fresh out of graduate school, right. And I don't think you have much to tell your peers. And in fact, I think if you're doing it under the auspices of CACREP, you need to be practicing as a supervisor for at least 2 years before you can do that effectively in that purpose. So I'm sorry. I didn't realize this was such a personal context, because that was my reaction. And we have students who are not as well equipped as you, who lean against my door and go, I'm going to start my private practice. What do you think I should do? And I'm like, go work somewhere first and get some background. So, oops, I'm that guy.
Well, I look consultations leadership, and at least 51% of leadership is theater. So I think for me, give them something entertaining. I used to do stuff with working songs into material, or, give them their money's worth. Look at it as a kind of performance art. I think that's probably the best attitude to have. And the thing about leadership being theater, that's not mine. That's actually George Patton. And he said 90% of leadership was theater. So little golf between me and George.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think and sometimes it's kabuki theater, but you have to look that one up, kids. Stephanie?
Okay. So, what came to mind for me first was maybe a slightly nicer version of what Marty was saying, which is like stay in your lane. Don't talk to anything about anything or talk to anything that you don't know, which is at that point pretty much anything. And that to seek consultation from more experienced people perhaps, but really, you can consult about it's just like I don't think it's really consulting at that point. I think it's more of venting. I don't know. I mean, you can consult and say, oh, it's hard, but maybe not consult in the sense of taking that advice as someone who's had more experience in the field to that point, if that makes sense. So, it's knowing what you don't know, which is a lot. And you have to learn a lot. And the thing is I think when you're doing it too, you don't really know that you don't know. So just reminding yourself of that or reminding others and consulting and say, there's a lot we haven't gone through yet.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's answers. And, honestly, Marty and Steph, those answers feel validating because, like for me, we'll set up and just like, I haven't like provided official supervision or anything like that. And so it's more about, I think for me, like, can I just provide a space for whether it be something like you said, stuff like just venting or processing like what someone's going through. Cause like I did have a lot of conversations with my peers in more of the form of just like peer support, not necessarily like supervision or anything like that, but more along the lines of like peer support where people could discuss of like, yeah, what is like your experience with this versus like, how do we assist this client or something like that? Like, but more about the processing of like, hey, what's coming up for you? And can we talk about that and see what's going on? What are your hopes for your own supervision and your own, providing therapy? What are your interests, and allowing people like a space to explore that? Cause it's definitely something, there's so much that I don't know about that process yet. And so I think approaching it from that perspective of like, I'm clearly like, not the expert here. And even inside of like, loose consultation or whatever with, people who are working in the field, like I do now, just like friends or peers who are still out there, like working in the field, like that I think is like kept pretty simple, although it's been nice to learn about that process, like through our internship classes towards the end of graduation about like, how does like peer support develop over 2 semesters? So yeah, thanks everybody for your answers.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't write in my notes that should have made it into my notes was know your networking. Know people around you that if you get those kind of questions, I haven't kept up on the trauma literature. I have my own feelings about the trauma literature, but I do know if somebody comes to ask me and get consulted on trauma, I'm going to say, no, I'm not the person. You need to go talk to so-and-so or that person. Or so if you're in a particular area or market, that you need to know who does that stuff well and support the person who's asking that request sometimes to come to you or to go to another person, particularly when you're new. So my question, I could not think of a good way to frame it, so I just kind of wrote it out because I have a solution and I'm trying to see if you have similar experiences in your life. And my question is, what is something, not necessarily academic, that you will research just out of your own habits and curiosity?
Well, there's a lot, but I think one that tops the list came from my favorite historian, author, Douglas Brinkley. The guy's amazing. His output's incredible. And he covers contemporaneous events like the Katrina episode, as well as, history of the states and stuff. But he said in all of his travels and researches, no one's ever done a good history of sewage treatment. And I'm like, dang, that's important. And then I started... right? And I started looking stuff up, and it's really interesting. So, yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm just scraping the surface on sewage treatment.
You're just getting what floats to the top first.
Oh, good night, folks. Yeah.
Okay, Stephanie, compose yourself.
Yeah, how do I follow that? So, so many things just like can pique my interest, and then I get very fascinated. I know I've talked about music and researching music and seeing how things are connected with different artists and how, everything kind of evolved. And that's, that can get me on any day, especially with an app called Who Sampled. And it can just so much of, it's awesome. It's amazing. But also just random thoughts sometimes. It can just be, and then I go onto Reddit and I start researching. And then, like, for instance, I don't know if I should admit this, but watching Bluey. Then I got really involved in Bluey lore and like finding out like things about this world that people that these characters live in, and like all the backstory and all of the little, Easter eggs that are left in every episode. I don't know. Those are probably some of the least interesting revelation type of things it's not as interesting as sewage. I'm sorry. But it can be anything, and I'll just get involved and hyper focused and really into something. It can be completely random, and it just takes up my whole day.
So I've thought about this question two ways. I don't pay as much attention to sports as I used to, but I do still love baseball and basketball. And I do like to spend some amount of time studying both. And so in baseball, I'm really interested in pitching mechanics and surgeries that pitchers go through and arm slots and all the intricacies of how to pitch a baseball it's just fascinating to me how that happens. But I also feel like because I followed baseball since I was, in my mom's womb, basically, I can get baseball pretty quickly in terms of this stuff is just building on other scaffolded knowledge. The basketball portion though is a lot harder for me to grasp because it's not a sport that I paid attention to until my teens, but I love, watching videos on YouTube about how to break down what defenses are doing, what offenses are doing. It feels like it enriches the watching experience for me, even though I don't watch sports as much as I used to. And it definitely though enriched the baseball experience for me of understanding what pitchers are trying to do up there, what batters are trying to do up there. Especially as someone who wanted to be a major league pitcher when I was growing up, that's fascinating. And also basketball too, although, I do pay a little bit less attention to it, but it's something that studying it does feel like it does enrich the experience for me.
Hey, Mitch, do you think Shohei Ohtani's going to get back on the mound this season?
It would be so interesting. It's fascinating to me that, more people don't do this, but I'd love to see it.
Well, my question comes from something that is creepy stalky that I do. It just seems like a little obsessive when I think about it, but I figured, so I'll bear witness to the world. I really like movies. I like watching movies, and I like locations in movies, and I'm really curious about locations in movies. So, for example, I was watching for the umpteenth time The Blues Brothers, and, it is a great location movie for Chicago. And having grown up in Chicago, I know some of the locations. I'm familiar with them. But you can go on IMDb and you can find out locations. And then you can go on Google Maps and you can put a street scene and put yourself in a 360 view so you can look at the location of a particular scene that was shot in it. And so this becomes a little kind of hunt and find task for me. So if you've ever seen the movie What's Up, Doc, it's a Peter Bogdanovich film. It was shot in San Francisco. And that movie is rich with locations. So I will do certain things like watch two actors talk in a cafeteria and then see the business that's across the street through the window. Google the business in whatever city I think it's in, find the location of the business, and then go to the street scene to find out where they did the shot. And I did this one time, and I think it was a San Francisco movie. Hitchcock did a lot of San Francisco movies too. And you could pan in from the street scene, the window seat that they sat in to have their conversation. And when I was in San Francisco, I wound up walking around and went past that location. And on the wall inside the restaurant is a dedication or a sign that says, this scene was shot here in this particular movie. So it's a little kind of creepy detective work. But when I see some things in the background, particularly, businesses, and unfortunately, a lot of the businesses have folded, but you can still find out the street location. So in Blues Brothers, they blow up a hotel. Well, I used to work downtown, and there were all of those at what they called SRO hotels, where people would stay for a week for $100, like they do in the Blues Brothers. So I was familiar with a bunch of them. There's one next to a place I worked called the LEM. We called it the Lem Motel. Don't know what it stood. I can't remember what it stood for. But just finding those location shots and then going to see what the status is of the place right then and there. And again, San Francisco is a great city, and the movies like any of the Hitchcock films or What's Up, Doc, you'll be able to go to those sites and see where they are and what condition they're in now. So that's sort of my creepy little research thing that I do to distract me from the sad, sad life that I have.
Can I say that whenever I get a little bit of information and someone's curious, I do have a problem Googling. So so the LEM motel was Le Meridian, Essex, I believe.
Really?
I don't know. Michigan Avenue, you said, near Grant Park in the museum campus?
No, this was up on Ontario. I used to work at what was at one time the VW building, the Volkswagen building, when I worked for the Department of Human Resources up on Ontario 600 North something, LaSalle, I think. And like across the street was this flop house.
Yeah, because that sounded really nice. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. If you look up the old Volkswagen building, North LaSalle in Chicago, they'll probably give you an image. It's a glass cube, and Department of Human Resources was located there at one point when I worked for them. So anyway, let's do the final shot question. What do you want to be remembered for?
This struck me as a tough question. Ironically, I'm hoping my cultural artifacts, my fiction, my music, something in that vein. As far as I can tell, I got till 2056. So I got time to do some work in those areas, especially once I retire from university. So yeah, I hope that. And I hope those who I was fortunate enough to share intimacies with in this life, I hope that they remember me fondly, and I'll say nothing more about that.
Yeah, I think I just want to be remembered as a worthwhile human. I guess that's kind of broad, but if I was positive for people, or did something helpful for people, that's on like the personal level. I want to have, to be remembered in those kinds of ways. And maybe there's a bit of my ego that wants to be remembered for the minimal amount of academic work that I've been put out thus far, which hopefully will increase, but contributing something worthwhile that way as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in relationships or friendships or whatever. Just, I hope that I'm more a positive influence than a negative one, at least. Certainly want to, both like personally and professionally, make a positive impact on people's lives however I can.
Wow. That's, originally when I tried to come up with this, I thought, what do you want on your tombstone was the question. And then I changed it to soften it a bit. I try to think of a talent that I think I have that transcends whatever work I do. And I'd like to be remembered as being witty and having a quick mind. That in social situations that I could always make connections between what people said and add a humorous spin to it. And that's, I think we've talked about this before on the show. It's the idea that as counselors, we listen to the narrative, and what I do with that narrative over a long period of time is find a funny way to repeat it in a situation that sometimes is meaningful and sometimes is just being funny. So that's what I came up. So maybe our listeners have some ideas about how they want to be remembered, and hopefully it sparks some of that. I want to thank the firing squad, Elliott, Mitch, and Stephanie, for joining us tonight. Look for these characters on their podcasts on the podtalk.net. Check out other podcasts on the podtalk.net. I'm doing a slew of them and mainly tech stuff, but some fun stuff. Eric, who's not with us tonight, is still chasing kids' sports, and he and I do one on Thursdays again called The Tech Savvy Professor for academics and technology. Our theme music is from Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.